Welcome to Supercharged by AI, a podcast by AI Portland. I am Megan Notarte, co-founder of AI Portland and partner at Cloud4. I'm joined by Nicole Moores, my AI Portland co-founder and product design manager at Driveway. We are here today to talk about our really amazing event last night, which was our now annual. I don't know if I told you that, Nicole, but I've been
Oh, I
calling it
had no
our
idea.
first annual science fair, which implies
Cool.
there will be a second annual science fair. So stay tuned, folks. Who knows? So we had a science fair where people came and brought their projects, specifically projects that they've been working on that incorporate AI in some way. And we set up at the Wacom Experience Center, which several people told me looked like an Apple store. So just for people listening, that gives you the vibe, right? Windows, tables, lots of people around. And people brought the trifolds, which was my absolute goal in all of this, was to set this up as like a middle school science fair with posters and people awkwardly standing in front of them.
It
We got
was
the
it
posters.
was
We didn't get the awkwardness.
no, not really. It was kind of a joke that we kind of threw into the description, right? Because we kind of like doubled down on this concept of science fair. And it was the joke in the description was it's okay if your mom has to stay up late with you to help you with your trifold
That's
poster.
right.
Haha. But people very much embraced this. And there were many trifolds and it was glorious.
And the trifolds were like, I mean, I would say high school level trifolds, right? There was pasting of things, there were glue sticks, there was cutting out of letters. It was,
I was impressed. I was
I was impressed
impressed.
too. My trifolds would
People brought it.
not have been so good. I mean, we should have known with our community that they'd be like, let's go, let's do this. So that's setting the scene, what we did last night. I think we always start from this place of like, for people who weren't there, what kinds of things did you learn as we went around and looked at all of these? Not everyone had a trifold, and no shade to those who didn't have a trifold. Definitely there were posters on the wall, there were screens that people used. But I think it speaks to the, I don't know, like how broad AI affects different parts of life in the world, because we did have some tactile things in the room. We did have screens. We did have posters. So what were your big takeaways?
Yeah, so yeah, the tactile nature I thought was just a really fun juxtaposition, right? Like with AI, with the technology, we think, computers, we think robots, we think screens. And so like the fact that people brought these sort of like really immersive physical things was awesome. The main thing I think I've taken away, and I think this comes from just like where you and I, Megan, are on our sort of journey into learning about AI. We had this sort of like peak, right? Just like the hype cycle where we're super excited, anything's possible, right? And then you're like, wait, I really like if use cases are actually hard. And like, what can I actually use this stuff for? It's sort of this like, oh, you have to have a computer science degree to be able to build things. And there's sort of this messy middle. And so it was just very inspiring to me to see just people I know I knew some of these people, they're just people in our community bring these projects. A lot of them have really practical and useful projects. And
That
so
was the
it's just
thing I always want to see, and I think we talk about this a lot, is there's a lot of very hand wavy stuff out there, very typical for this like hype cycle moment.
yeah.
There's a lot of people are like, look, you can do this really cool automation. And then when you go to do that, you're like, wait a second. First of all, this is actually harder than it seems. And also, like,
Yeah.
I couldn't use this in my day to day life. So yes, you can do it, but like you can't actually use it. And these were really practical things that people are doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And in some cases, things that do a lot of good, right? And so I felt very inspired by that. Pete Lee had a
Yeah.
project. He's an EMT, and I want to say he's a ham radio operator, but he built the system that will convert ham radio signals. So I believe that's Morse code into like a translation layer with AI that will take emergency messages over ham and turn it into a message that could be read or heard in
That's so
case of a
cool.
wildfire emergency. He even wore like his
I say he wore a
EMT
costume. Yes.
vest, uniform, not costume, but yeah.
Okay, I mean, but it was, like, definitely you're right, it was the uniform, but it definitely was, like, he was wearing that to, like, enhance his prestige.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a very practical use case, just super rad and like also does good for our community
Yeah,
and
people were
the
really
people.
interested in his, like, I could barely so for those listening, we gave all our participants a science fair medal in the spirit of this being a real science fair, and I could barely get through people to give him his medal. He was like a lot of people were very interested in what he was doing.
Yeah. And we had, oh,
Yeah. No, you
another
go.
project
Yeah,
that I
practical.
wanted to call out that I thought was really great, like the human side of it, right? Was Robbie, oddlyrobbie.org. If you're curious to go look at it,
He gave
he
swag
uses, yeah, he made swags. Way to bring the swag.
to bring the swag. These are made out of cornstarch or something, so they will eventually biodegrade.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I'm holding in my hand this little, like it has his name, Oddly Robbie, and it's like a little I don't know, like a little thing you can hold. Looks like a
Yeah.
crayon. Yeah.
His project, he made a AI agent and he uses a wearable device, an AI pin that helps him navigate the world as someone with autism. So again, like using this technology to sort of augment his real world to help him in conversations with people and interactions with people
Yeah,
and
and it
he
was
showed me it
really
like projects what do they call it? Digital ink. So it projects
yeah,
onto his hand
yeah, and he
information.
can it also, like, speaks out loud. I thought that was really cool because those devices have like, most press have come out and been like, "These are useless," or whatever, and I thought it was really cool to see that there are uses for these things that are really helping can really help people.
Throwback to our conversation with Donna
Mhm.
Davis about some of these technologies really helping with accessibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's inspiring and
Yeah.
just awesome use of this technology that I think we're like, oh, how can it help me write my emails? But like these are very practical use cases for the humans.
I mean, you talk practical, and I can't help but think of Suzanne Tong's presentation. I say
Yeah.
presentation, but it was her setup and her project with where she made a virtual AI version of her CEO with his consent.
Yes, Nathan
Yeah,
Christensen is her CEO and he creates content, right, as a
yeah,
CEO.
and then she
And
created basically like a digital twin of him that's called just Nate.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
What
super rad as, someone who works in corporate, trying to get things out of executives can be challenging. They're just always so pressed for time. They're so busy. They're important. So
but you need their
her
review and you need their
Yeah.
input.
So her
Yeah.
team needs, writing and content, and like maybe a reporter will ask her team for a quote. So they trained Nate, his AI clone, on samples of Nathan's writing. They did a bunch of research on the ideal amount of writing to give. And like her presentation was, like, fantastically designed as well. So they gave Nate written examples. I think it was a few 100,000 words. Like 100,000 was the minimum and like a million or whatever was like the maximum. So they had like I think it was 200,000 words to
Wow.
train it on. And it saves time. Like it's an efficiency boon for her team. So then Nathan reviews Nate's work is like, that's good, or just gives them like a head start on getting this content created. She even had two samples, one from Nathan, one from Nate, and you could choose like which one was it. And she said it's incredible how much it sort of embodies Nathan and gives them that efficiency boost on their team. Just super cool. It's also on LinkedIn, so definitely
I was
check
gonna
that
say,
out.
yes, she
Yeah.
has written several articles about how she went about this and how it works for her. So you can we'll link in the show notes or whatever to Suzanne's stuff because it is pretty cool. What else did you find out there?
Yeah, just like a few really creative, like people using AI in creative and artistic ways. Elizabeth Goetz was back. She was one of our lightning talk speakers from Everyone's a Creative Director at Instrument. She came back with another project that was taking abstract art, very simple black and white abstract art, and putting it through stable diffusion. And there was another model
Mhm.
and using very limited text prompting, like keep it black and white or like very minimal keywords and seeing what came out. And they're really interesting, sort of abstract, like the visual abstract work that she was giving it was super simple, and it was giving a little bit more than that, but just very compelling, sort of visual artwork experiment. Her presentation, when you see it all together, like all these different sort of outputs, just very striking and like a
Yeah,
simple concept, but what comes out, of these tools is in and of itself like very artistic and compelling.
it
It
can
was
be.
great to see
Yeah.
her back. Yeah, I mean, I think we've all seen the AI generated illustrations and pictures, and we're like,
Right.
that's bad. You know what I mean?
Right, but it's interesting to get this in the hands of artists who are like,
In the
"Ooh, what
hands of
can I do
artists
with,
who are
like" who, like, want to experiment, and I love her, like I
absolutely.
think she's thing was, like, minimalism and maximalism, so it was, like, minimalism
Yes.
and prompt. Yeah, it was
Yep.
pretty cool.
Yeah,
Also,
totally.
A plus trifold.
Mhm. Totally, totally. We had Mark Swain who did sort of a live portrait. What was the he was using Comfy UI to create these animated versions of people
Yeah,
and he had
so
a
you
camera set up and people
yeah, you
were
could
really
sit
into
down.
that.
He made avatars of me and Nicole, which was very cool. And you could sit down and like you would move your facial expression and your avatar would move it along, which was very interactive and fun. Also, I was like, oh, that I guess I that is what I look like as a cartoon character.
Yeah, it would be like imagine Megan and Nicole as like Pixar
Pixar.
characters.
Should I use that as my like LinkedIn picture? Maybe that would be better.
Totally, totally.
His setup was super cool too. I like it.
Yeah, yeah, it was awesome. We also had Chia, she's industrial designer. I had a hard time even getting close to her exhibit, right? Because it was so popular. There were so many people there just enthralled with her process and how she was using it. So she was showing examples of shoes that she had designed. As a designer, I thought it was fascinating because we have this very classic, well established design process. It's the double diamond process. It's, how all the big companies kind of think about like design thinking, design process. She took that and kind of turned it on its head and like changed it completely using AI for ideation and like just morphing that process and using AI to sort of inform her end designs. And she's a fantastic designer, and that was definitely present in her presentation.
Oh
Everything
man,
looked
I
so beautiful.
it did, and I also couldn't ever really get there because there were so many people all the time around her,
Yeah.
and I just keep hearing people saying like, "Did you see the shoe thing?" Like,
Yeah.
there was a lot of buzz around that.
Yeah. Then we had like, we had the creative stuff and then we had very, very like I would say academic,
And
right?
technical.
And
Yeah,
technical.
I loved that we managed to get that, like, breadth of what people are doing in AI. So we had
Yeah.
Victor's, academic poster.
Yes.
Like, he takes to
So
academic conferences. He's a PhD student, right?
right. So Victor, he's with Oregon State University, and this is like work that he has actually published, right? So it's real deal work about language translation. He gave me his whole spiel, and I wanna say that I understood a few things that he said, but it was very technical, and he
Yeah.
is so, so, so smart, and
Yeah, we'll
I
link I've got his, like, preprint link, but it was simultaneous translation that's augmented with an LLM. He says it's the first open source framework of its kind, which is very, very cool, but definitely we were like, "Okay, we got the academic, like, perspective here,"
yeah.
which was pretty cool. It was really, really neat to see people getting really into that. I mean, Arun's presentation was pretty technical as well, right?
Totally. So he developed his RAG model, which is pretty cool. But again, like full spectrum, right? Like someone who developed, a model down to like, CEO, AI agent. So
Right.
the
Yeah.
spectrum was definitely there.
So RAG, retrieval augmented generation, is a technique for getting more specific and direct and accurate information using an LLM. So it's a layer kind of on top of that. So his was summarizing using RAG, right, base UI to summarize a document. And it's cool to get, like I said, it's really cool to get some more technical perspective on these things. We talk about RAG here and there, and so it's kind of cool to see how he's actually using it in a really productive way.
Totally, totally. And that's the probably the future of these tools, right? Because
Yep.
that RAG layer is more accurate, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you're
Yeah, it helps
it's
it.
contained.
Querying your own documents. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Who
Yeah.
did we miss?
Who did we miss?
We had Seth.
We also had Josh with his data encoded graphics, right?
Oh, we
So
haven't even
they
talked about, yeah.
Yeah. So, they created patterns that you could scan with your phone. Those patterns can be put on
And a
clothing,
textile. Yeah.
apparel, yeah, bags, just products and goods and stuff. So, yeah, that
And that
was
that so that was cool because they had, like, a mannequin with their apparel, they had all this, like, textiles that had these patterns are, like, imagine that the whole pattern is a QR code, so instead of just having, like, right? That was my understanding.
the whole
Instead of just
pattern
having this
is,
fixed place, you could just take a picture of anywhere on the bag or the shirt.
but it wasn't like it was a QR code pattern. It just looked
No,
like
there were
uh
space cats.
yeah, like a pattern
Yeah,
on a shirt
any
or a
pattern.
sweatshirt,
Yeah, yeah,
that could be
very
scanned
cool.
with a phone and go to a destination on the internet. So,
Yeah, we had, Nick from Josh's company was there doing that demo, which was very cool to have, like, I don't know, like a mannequin out there. Like, so did you stop by Seth's booth? He was talking about, I feel like his was the Mary Poppins. Yeah, AI Mary Poppins.
yes. So, I did, and AI Mary Poppins is a product that he's developing that's content, sort of like content moderation, but for kids. So, as a parent, you can go in and sort of add, boundaries over what content your kids are going to consume and or it will learn from what they're interested in. So my daughter is hot for dragons lately and
Yeah,
so
yes,
it
she
would
is.
learn that she loves dragons and show her, dragon things for learning or entertainment.
Yeah.
So that is super cool.
We had a sort of like spontaneous person join who we hadn't had a chance to connect with beforehand because just email and timing, Matt. And I know, so he's a teacher and his background is in applied mathematics. I didn't get a chance to see his whole thing. Did you?
So he was using AI to create proofs or check proofs.
That's right.
Um,
I did. Yes, you're
my
right.
my question for him was I was under the impression that AI was bad at math. And he said, sure. But like from his
But
experience using this, it's actually pretty good at like,
validating a proof.
yeah, validating a proof.
I'm going to pretend it hasn't been about 25 years, maybe longer since I've had to do a mathematical proof. So I'm going to pretend I'm like, yeah, I remember that time in high school, college. I did
he
proofs once, everyone, I promise.
he was saying that children are very smart these days. And so,
Oh my gosh,
that's
he
really
totally
great to hear.
was. That in the I believe the children are the future kind of view. That was
Mhm.
very, very good. I feel like we had Steve Elon Taylor with his consciousness project, which was definitely,
Yeah.
we talk about the broad spectrum that is AI in everyone's lives, and this definitely took us to a more AGI, so artificial general intelligence, consciousness, sentient place, which we don't always go. He also had the world's cutest dog with him,
He did have a very cute dog. Shout out to Stella,
Stella.
the
Ooh.
poodle.
Also,
Very
you
cute.
want hot tip, you wanna make friends at a networking event?
Bring
Show
a
up
puppy.
with a tiny, chill dog that looks like a teddy bear. Everyone will wanna talk to you.
Absolutely. So I think, this sentience, AGI, that's a part of all of this. You know what I mean? People are interested in this and it gets people curious and asking questions. And so it was great to have that representation of people who are really interested in what this means. Again,
Like a
it all these things kinda go back to, like, putting a finer point on humanity and, like, these tools, like, they almost make you get introspective about what it means to be a
to be
person, you
human.
know?
Yeah,
Mhm.
we touch on that a lot, like, so much of what when we talk to people, we really do emphasizes we're trying to understand what makes us uniquely human and how to lean into that. And we didn't talk about Ron Bronson's presentation, his project.
So his project was from a design project he did last year where he was using Midjourney to sort of like explore dystopian themes. But it's funny, last year Midjourney, like he was showing me it didn't have like the knowledge built in to be able to like realize some of the themes he wanted to. Like one of them
Yeah,
was like an eviction robot. His themes were very dystopian, kind of dark, right?
yeah.
So he like it wouldn't give him necessarily what he wanted, and it wouldn't give him like a white man that wasn't wearing a suit.
Oh,
So
right. Yeah,
and like
yeah.
I think that's an example, like, now you can get that out of these models or whatever, out of these tools, but back then you couldn't. They were just very limited and things change in this area so fast. Now you can get that stuff, and so his project also he's a designer, so it's very beautifully designed sort of
Yeah,
print showing this project.
that was
It was
cool.
great.
That's very cool. Did we cover all of them?
I think so. I don't think we forgot anyone.
I
Um
I mean, sort of from a stepping back a little bit, it was so inspiring and interesting to see what people are doing, and I was talking to someone at the event about how, you know, AI, it's this, like, almost infinite possibilities on what you could do, and it's very overwhelming, especially when you get past that initial moment where you're like, "Oh, I now know how to more effectively use ChatGPT or how to write a really good prompt." It seems like like, space between that and, like, doing something really cool is very big. It feels like a very big leap sometimes. It's overwhelming, and so sometimes all it takes is, like, going up to someone's trifold and getting that spark of inspiration on, like, "Oh, I never thought," like, not only is it possible for me to create, like, a virtual version of someone who I need sign off from all the time to help me, like, get a step ahead, but it's worth it to do that work.
yeah.
Because sometimes it takes a lot of work and then you realize this actually doesn't work the way that I want. So it's really cool to see, like, someone has done it and they're saying, "This was worth it. This worked for me, and here is how I do it." Because sparks that inspiration in you to think of, like, "Oh, what are ways that I could maybe be making my life a little bit easier?"
Exactly, that's what this whole event was about, right? Is like Tinder, those little sparks of
Sparks.
inspiration that are like, "Oh, wow, I have a use case, I have a problem I'm trying to solve."
Yeah, and I think other people were talking to me about like, "Oh, you should do this again," or whatever, and I think I kind of I don't know if we'll do this science fair thing again until maybe September of next year because it does feel like a very back to school kind of like
Yeah.
thing. But just to put it in people's minds, in January, we're working on a like superpower your life event, new year, new you, and sort of that kind of theme. And so we may not, I don't know the format. I don't think we know the format quite yet, but we will be reaching out to the community for people to be submitting their projects or the things that they're doing with AI to supercharge their lives, not just their work lives. A lot of this stuff was very work oriented, I think, very
Mhm.
professionally oriented last night. So just to kind of plant a seed in people's people's brains that if, start thinking about the things you're using AI for in your life and it either we might be doing like lightning talks. I'm not sure. I don't think we know yet.
I also want
January
to say, because
feels
I
far
talked,
away.
yeah, I talked to at least one person that was like, "Oh, I have a thing. I felt like maybe my thing wasn't right or good enough or
Yes.
like important enough for this." And I was like,
Oh
if
my
that is
goodness.
you, if you are listening, these events are for you and your thing, and you are good enough to share. And please, it's just what Megan said about these sparks of how people are actually using it and how is it actually useful. These events are for everyone. And I strongly encourage people to
Please
share.
submit their ideas. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Any closing thoughts on our first annual AI science fair?
Yes. I just think it was such a great idea, Megan. This was all you, your brainchild, and it was
It
such a
came
good
together.
idea. People loved it. I loved it. It was great.
We
So, gold
we
star.
almost
You
ran
get
out of LaCroix.
I
Like
know. It was amazing.
that should be our success measure for any event is like the number of LaCroix
Forget
gone through.
forget the amount of people who, like, hit the button to register for the event. It's the amount
Exactly.
of drinks that get consumed.
On the like AI Portland LaCroix meter. It's like off the
Exactly.
charts. Had to send shout out to my husband Ernest for going and getting extra LaCroix about 40 minutes into the event.
Yeah. It's totally
Oh, shout out to
MVP.
Ernest. That's right. We needed some assistance. Cool. Well, that's a wrap. We did
That's
it
the end.
again. Thank you again for listening to this episode of Supercharged by AI. Subscribe to get all the latest episodes and check us out at aipdx.info for more information.